on the wall. All your problems, all your problems, all your feelings. We're supposed to care somehow. Oh, you got your pictures on the wall, got your posters on the wall, got your problems on the wall. Yeah, all your problems, all your problems. We're all working harder, waiting for a good chance to get a little distance farther, waiting for a good chance to be another victim or martyr. Say anything to get me out of here. Working harder, waiting for a good chance to get a little distance farther, waiting for a good chance to be another victim or martyr. Say anything to get me out of here. Oh, you remind me, the rules are changing with all our plans and our rearranging. You're missing out now, all of the time. I'm sick of your problems, all of your problems. We're all working harder, waiting for a good chance to get a little distance farther, waiting for a good chance to be another victim or martyr. Say anything to get me out of here.
Hey everyone, Greg Staley here from Diverge Media. We doing another impromptu live stream here again because we have come across some very important information that Canada needs to hear and really the whole world needs to hear. So recently, we'll wait a few minutes here just as people are coming in. If you can share this link out, that would be gratefully great and helpful. This isn't going to be one you want to miss. Quite frankly, what's going on with these lockdowns, we know more than we did in the first time around, and there's absolutely no reason to go into lockdown. And when you hear this next piece, you're going to realize there's really no need to be wearing masks for people that are asymptomatic, or as I call them, healthy. And there's no reason to continue the fear campaign. We need to protect the most vulnerable, and we need to get on with their lives. Otherwise, the damage we do is going to be so catastrophic over the next decade for Canadians that it will be a hard and long recovery. So we can't allow it. We won't allow it. And today we're going to go over a study that I think is going to be just highlight the hypocrisy of going into another lockdown. So we're going to pop on another song here, invite people into this live stream. We're going to play a few minutes and then we're going to get started. All right, everyone? Just a second here. Just a second. Don't share it yet. And now. What are we looking like?
If I got a problem, you're the first one to know. But my feelings keep changing like stations on the radio.
All right, I think we got some more people in. Unfortunately, Restream's giving us trouble, so it shows 0 in. So if you're here, throw a comment so we know you're here. This is an important one. So obviously, you've seen our recent video, Quebec completely locked down. Whole sections of Walmart barred off. It looks like they're talking about that kind of thing here today. Can you send me the Ottawa Citizen one from you know who? We were talking about it earlier. I don't want to say the name. Basically, they're talking about now, because big box stores are open, it's not fair to small business. So the solution's not to open small business. It's to give them subsidy and then shut down portions of big box store, which isn't the solution at all. We're tired of you trying to find middle ground. We just want truth. That's what the Canadian citizens want. That's what the globe wants. That's what everybody who's been paying attention to what's going on wants. I'm on the Saskatoon side of Alberta border, so afternoon here. Okay, Glenn, welcome. Faye, thank you for coming in. AB Free, good to see you back. It's still morning in the county police state. Well, it's just barely afternoon here. Good to see you all. All right, let's get into it. So, pull up when you're ready, Kate. This is the study we're talking about here. Post-lockdown SARS-CoV-2 nucleic acid screening in nearly 10 million residents of Wuhan, China. Now, I know some will be quick to dismiss this study altogether because it's out of Wuhan, China. What I would recommend is I will put some context on this from what we already know from Public Health Ontario through CEBM, which is run by the CDC. And we're going to go through our articles that shows those things. And so, fantastic. Finally have my glasses, can see. There we go. All right. And so we're going to put some context on this for everyone, but I need people to share this out. I will explain what I'm going to do with this information afterwards, and I think it's something everybody can get on board with. Enough's enough. Truth needs to prevail. 2021's coming, and I'm not accepting more of the same. November 20th, this study was published of this year. Okay, so let's get into it. Abstract. Stringent COVID-19 control measures were imposed in Wuhan between January 23rd and April 8th, 2020. Estimates of the prevalence of infection following the release of restrictions could inform post-lockdown pandemic management. Here we describe a citywide SARS-CoV-2 nucleic acid screening program between May 14th and June 1st, 2020 in Wuhan. All city residents aged 6 years or older were eligible, and 9,899,828 or 92.9% of the city participated. No new symptomatic cases and 300 asymptomatic cases were identified. Now, it says there is asymptomatic cases identified. We will explain what that actually means because they tell you in the study here. Now, there were no positive tests among the 1,174 close contacts of asymptomatic cases. So, 107 of 34,424 previously recorded COVID-19 patients tested positive again, and the prevalence of SARS-CoV-2 infection in Wuhan was therefore very low 5 to 8 weeks after the end of the lockdown. Now, I don't know if they're trying to bolster their lockdown here, the measures saying they work, but I will explain exactly what matters out of this. They go through their introduction. We're going to skip that. We're going to go straight to the results for time's sake. There were 10,652,513 eligible people greater than 6 years of age in Wuhan, and the nucleic acid screening was completed in 19 days. It tested a total of 9,809,000. We already know this. Okay. The screening of the participants without a history of COVID found no newly confirmed 19 cases and 300 asymptomatic positive cases with a detection rate of 0.303. So even presuming that asymptomatic positive cases could infect others, it is a minute, so small, it's almost statistically, it just doesn't matter. Boy, it matters. Oh, Graham, okay, stop. That's not even the part that matters in this study. Of the 300 asymptomatic positive cases, 2 cases came from one family and 2 from another family. There were no previously confirmed COVID-19 patients in those 2 families. Total of 1,174 close contacts of the asymptomatic positive cases were traced. All tested negative for COVID-19. So every close contact of those asymptomatic cases did not test positive. But that's not what we're here for. There were 34,424 previously recovered COVID-19 cases who participated in screening. Of that 34,424 participants with a history of COVID, 107 tested positive again. And this could be picking up old virus. If you've followed our work, you know that the amplification cycles of a PCR test, if ran too high, can pick up dead virus. Now, this is why this matters. This is this whole study in a nutshell, why you need to share the heck out of this video, why you need to share the heck out of this study. But we need to get this information out. And I will tell you what I'm going to do with this information after we get through it. Now, virus cultures were negative for all. I repeat, virus cultures were negative for all asymptomatic positive and re-positive cases, indicating no viable virus in positive cases detected in the study. What does that mean? Viable means it was not able to reproduce. Meaning if you retested positive or you were asymptomatic, of the 10 million people, only 300 asymptomatic were found. And of those 300 plus people, none of them actually had a viable virus that was able to replicate, meaning they're not infectious. Now, we're being told that we have to mask up. We're being told that this is the reason, because asymptomatic spread. You got to protect the vulnerable. It does nothing. We've done numerous articles that show the science is murky at best under the perfect circumstances of people wearing masks in the perfect climatized environments with no reuse to the mask, maybe 20, 30 minutes at a time, and getting rid of it as soon as it's sold. And we know that that is not happening in the general populace. You've likely seen the articles by now. New York Post, I believe it was, or New York Times, talking about reusing soiled masks can actually cause more illness. Surprise, surprise, common sense prevails finally. Now, all asymptomatic positive cases, re-positive cases, and their close contacts were isolated anyways, at least 2 weeks until the results of the nucleic acid testing were negative. None of the detected positive cases or their close contacts became symptomatic or newly confirmed with COVID-19 during their isolation period. Now, what I want to talk about is, what does that mean in a nutshell? What does that mean in a nutshell? It means that if we're going to lock down here again, which we already have, and it sounds like it's happening across the country, but I speak for Ontario, that's where we're from, then you better have a dang good reason to do it. And of 10 million people that were tested, 10 million roughly, 980, whatever the number was I read out, 9,089,000, whatever. Of those people, only 300 were actually asymptomatic that tested positive. Now, what does a test positive mean? It meant nothing, because when they sent it to a lab to see if it was viable, meaning it could infect another cell culture line, it could not. Every single asymptomatic case. We're being told that the mandatory mask mandate is to protect people from asymptomatically spreading it. We've all heard this. I reported on this months ago. You might have seen the article we recently put up, the mandatory mask article, talking about the Ontario Nursing Association winning in 2018, the arbitrator of that case, citing that there was no significant evidence that it was beneficial to mask healthy or asymptomatic nurses on the VOM policy, vaccine or mask policy at St. Michael's Hospital. We have politicians here in Ontario, we have politicians in Canada that are thinking they're seeking the middle ground by trying to reason with the restrictions, trying to reason with the chaos, trying to find a middle ground on the lie. You don't find middle ground on lies. What you do is you stand firm on the truth and you say no, because the truth says it's this. And the PCR test is known to be unreliable. And now we have 10 million residents roughly that have been tested. And of those 300 asymptomatic people, and of those, when they were sent to a lab to determine that they were viable, 0. And I repeat, 0 came back that they could actually infect somebody else. And we reported this way, way, way back when. Is anybody finally ready to listen? Businesses are on the verge of never being able to open again. Enough is enough. People need to stop trying to seek middle ground. We need to stand firm on the truth. And I'm not saying to beat people over the head with it, because if you do, they're not going to listen anyways. We need to do it with love, and you need to find a way to get people to listen. If we can't do that, we're not going to win. But the truth is on our side. We know that asymptomatic people do not spread this virus. We know that is an issue predominantly in long-term care homes as far as infections and deaths go. We know that there's been historically issues over the last 20 to 30 years in Ontario with the long-term care facilities. They have not been up to code. They are not protecting the vulnerable. They are not protecting the elderly. We know that Doug Ford promised over $300 million to create 1,500 acute care beds. Acute, and I can't remember the terminology, but he said he was going to create 1,500 hospital beds, extra ones. Where are they? And if we have them, then we're nowhere near the capacity. You're going to shut down businesses. You're going to destroy my future, my kids' future, this economy's future over what? Asymptomatic spread, over a possibility, over a maybe, or as we talked with Dr. Yaffe when we read her words. Dr. Yaffe said it is on the new mutant strain virus you've heard that's coming from the UK that, by the way, has been around since September. That this virus is not anymore, they said, this is our theory of why we believe it is more transmissible. Theory and believe, okay, that's double speak for we don't know, but we're going to presume. And now we're locking down again. We're throwing away the key on the economy again. And how many people are not going to make it that barely made it out of the first one, and now you're telling them close it down again? Let's go into our history of what we covered here. Now, you would say, listen, lots of total deaths. We did an article comparing total deaths during flu COVID season. What do the numbers say? We went to, was this, I can't remember where we pulled this one from. Kate, StatsCan? It's in the article somewhere here. Where did I put it? Stats Canada. Everything from here, from Stats Canada. Now, what we did is we took the population based on the year, and we did the percentage of deaths and cases. We did the percentage of deaths during the month as a percentage of total population for that year. 2018, we go here. Let's go down to the comparison is what we want to bring up. In September, okay, it was down in March compared to 2019 as a percentage of population. The amount of deaths went up a little bit in April. We get to September, 5.8 or 0.05836% as of 2019, 2020, 0.03976%. It went down. Now you could say like give the piper its due. I guess the alternative would be, oh, you kept people inside, therefore there's less accidents, things like that. But that is not what the numbers have been saying. We know that it's affecting predominantly people in retirement homes. We know it's predominantly affecting people that are already vulnerable every year. And what the numbers should be, if we're going to have a real comparison here, is what is the percentage of people that died in the flu over the 70 age category and in long-term care facilities over the last 5 or 10 years. Give me that number and we can have a conversation. Now, we did another post recently showing the number of tests that are done per million people this year for COVID. 330,000 plus tests per million people in Canada for COVID. I'd like to know what the influenza numbers are if we ran at the exact same number in testing. I guarantee you would find astronomically different numbers. Now, why do I bring that up? Because our hospitals have always been overrun. Our hospitals have always been underfunded, or not underfunded. They're actually very well funded. We just have a very, very poor management system where we don't have enough beds compared to other socialized medicine countries. We did an article on that recently as well. But when we go into these things that have been around for so long, we have, this is an article exposing the COVID narrative. When did we write this one? All the way back. This one's from November 20. Wait, no, where is it? This one's November 27th. We talked about Dr. Anthony Fauci of the NIH, talking about anything over 35, minuscule chance of it ever being replicated, that it would ever infect anybody with anything. We run 35 to 45 here in Canada. Now, then we found out that more so the CEBM, which is run by the CDC, included in this article, they said no growth viral was observed in samples with a CT cycle threshold greater than 24 or symptom onset day of greater than 8 8 days. This means that no viral growth was observed in the 90 samples tested that ran a cycle threshold of more than 24 cycles. And then we had 10 million in the Wuhan and 300 asymptomatic cases. And when they sent it off to be cultured, the viral growth, 0. That was the number, 0. In essence, they weren't able to demonstrate the viruses was infectious by showing it could infect another cell culture if it was run at a cycle threshold greater than 24 cycles. Link there. Moving on. Joke is, that is COVID-19 testing. When did we write this one? All the way back September 22nd. What did we write here? We wrote PCR detection. This is a direct quote. So I quote from the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, CEBM, Journal of Clinical Virology, in an article titled Real-Time PCR-Based SARS-CoV-2 Detection Canadian Laboratories, and the New York Times article, Your Coronavirus Tests Positive, Maybe It Shouldn't Be. Direct quote. This is from the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine. PCR, that it was titled PCR Positives. What do they mean? PCR detection of viruses is helpful so long as the accuracy can be understood. It offers the capacity to detect RNA in minute quantities, but whether the RNA represents infectious virus may not be clear. Well, it's certainly clear now. 10 million, 300 asymptomatic cases, 0. That was the number. Imagine that a virus enters your body. This is a quote again from that article there. In a few months, it might not do anything to you anymore. It might not do anything to your cells, virulence. And it might also lack the capacity to move into another person, infectivity, when you speak or sneeze. It is also possible that the virus simply never did anything to you and lacked infectivity from the very beginning. September 22nd, everyone, we wrote this. But traces of the virus might still be present in the person. In this case, the virus is present but inactive. How do you know you're truly infectious with a positive? You do the PCR. If the virus is found in the person, PCR true positive, that virus is injected into a culture cell. If by injecting the virus into culture cells, the virus is not able to reproduce in the cells, that virus cannot infect anybody any longer. This means that even if you are PCR positive, you are no longer contagious. That is, that the virus in you is no longer active. Now, we did do this at the very, very beginning through the National Microbiology Lab, who previously conducted this type of testing to ensure that all were actually infectious. And then they said, no, PCR test came in. Let's you know what, we don't need to do that anymore. And the NML changed. And now they provide all provinces and territories with laboratory reference services on an ongoing basis. These testing services provide a variety of support to provincial and territorial laboratories, including confirmatory testing for all presumed positive samples, quality assurance to ensure testing is accurate, and in-depth analysis of difficult to diagnose specimens. They are no longer doing, they're saying, for presumed positive, quality assurance to ensure testing is accurate. They go to other laboratories. They're not sending them off to ensure they're all actually infecting others now. So what does it mean? It means that we're locking down on a farce. Now, what is it? This is why this matters. If you're not sending off your infectious PCR cases, not that it's a great way to do it, but if this is the way they want to do it, okay. I wouldn't recommend it. I know it's a garbage way to test, and there's many, many issues riddled in the PCR testing. But if we're going to do it, then you need to test at a reasonable cycle threshold. And maybe you don't want to do that. Okay. But then you need to send it off to a lab to actually ensure that it can infect other cell cultures. And if it can't infect other cell cultures, that person is not infectious. And I would hazard the guess the number of people that have died and been hospitalized with COVID positive cases are not actually infectious with COVID. We have millions of coronaviruses, rhinoviruses, all sorts of viruses all over the planet and in your body. And if you take a test that is known and you're amplifying it to ungodly levels, you're going to find positive cases where there is none. Keep in mind, CEBM, run by the CDC, said anything over 24 cycle threshold has not been able to be cultured. 10 million residents in Wuhan, only 300 asymptomatic positive cases. And out of those 300, 0 were able to be cultured. We're shutting down on this premise alone. We're masking up on this premise alone. And here's what I'm going to do this week. I am going to write a letter template to every political MP and MPP here in Canada. I am going to send that out and ask that everybody sign their name, do the same. I can't start a petition. I don't think they're generally effective, but this can be shared a lot. And what we're going to ask is if these people are wrong, to admit that they're wrong and step down. Otherwise, start advocating for the truth. This is so clear as day now that the PCR test is being manipulated and it's being used to shut down the economy, force mandatory masking, and keep families away from each other. Enough. No more, enough. You can't do this to people. There's been no debate. There's been no anything. If you make the template, can you share? Absolutely, that's the plan. Because I'm one person. We're one media outlet. We're a small media outlet. We need all hands on decks. Well, we need all hands on deck. When I put this out, I'm going to do my best to make sure it's written well. I recommend you send it to everybody you think might be on the side of truth as far as politicians go. And demand that they take a clear and concise stance against all lockdowns. I will be sending it out to every politician I can. And what I would say is if they give you an answer like my record speaks for itself and it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't speak for itself. Politicians, it's like professional sports. Nobody cares what you did yesterday. What'd you do today? That's what matters. I don't give a dang about any politician's record unless you're willing to speak for the truth today. So we'll leave it at that. It's going to be a short, quick one, I guess. The PCR thing needs to come out. People need to understand that this isn't what it's made out to be. We had a story way back when talking about funeral worker who blew the whistle to us. He told us that people aren't dying of COVID, they're dying with COVID. And this is the truth. If you amplify a PCR test that picks up minute amounts of RNA, and you amplify it to astronomical levels, you're going to get positives like crazy. And then if you refuse to send it off and prove it can actually be infectious, all you're proving is that you're willing to destroy people's livelihoods, their family life, and the society as a whole on a whim. I would think we would want this to be concrete, clear, and concise. And for the politicians thinking, I don't want to get hung out there to dry, I'm going to take the middle ground on this and hope people, no, there is no middle ground on truth. There isn't middle ground on truth. It's either true or it's not. And it's true. The PCR test is not a reliable form of indicating that somebody is actually infectious, as indicated by 10 million residents roughly being tested, 300 being asymptomatic, and 0 of them actually being infectious. There is going to be no economy to come back to if you don't speak now. Oh, it's going to get better. It's all next year. There's not going to be a job for you to come back to. Most businesses are barely hanging on the edge right now. And you're saying they need your voice. Yes, you're going to get mocked. Yes, you're going to get ridiculed. Yes, there's going to be people that come out of the woodwork and try to get in with you and to figure out how they're going to smear your name. And I'm going to tell you right now, I already know what's going to happen to Diverge Media in 2020, 2021. AB Free will post it after here. It's also, somebody commented on it in the Facebook comment section. People are going to start coming after Diverge Media. You heard it here first. They're going to start coming after me and trying to smear me with every name in the book that they think will stick because of the controversial things we've covered. Now, everything we've covered is directly from sources, but I won't be surprised if the racist train comes out because of people I've interviewed or other things like that. Like I've seen what happened with Mark Friesen as an example from Press Progress. Here's what I would say. You want to change people's minds? You don't do it by beating them over the head and telling them they're wrong. You do it by being a friend and maybe going, hey, I think a little bit differently on things like that. That's how you change people's mind. If we're really out to change people's mind, you don't just beat people over the head and tell them they're wrong, because guess what? It doesn't work. You don't change people's minds by demanding that they accept your terms and call them, and then that's it. There is no middle ground. No. You don't change people's minds by labeling them X, Y, Z because they talked to or went to a thing with a certain group of people that said some ignorant things or maybe did some ignorant things. That's certainly not how you change people's minds. So that's how you know there's no desire to actually change people's minds. And why I bring this up is because somebody who interviewed with the CBC recently reached out to my wife to try to be a friend because of all the COVID work comments she's been putting in the comment section. I went, yeah. So this guy that is, directly tied to a municipality here in Ontario and has interviewed with the CBC after we called on them to debate, just magically wants to add my wife? Get ready. The smears are going to come, and it's okay. I will stand firm on the truth. Truth falls where it falls. We cover stories that matter. Canada needs to hear it. America needs to hear it. The whole world is demanding the truth right now, and nobody or very few people are actually willing to just stand loud and say it. PCR testing does not prove infectiousness. End of discussion. Send it to a lab and improve it can infect other cell cultures. Stop the fear propaganda. The number of deaths is inflated because of this, because you're not proving they were actually infectious with COVID. Therefore, you can't say that they died of COVID. If it's not able to infect others, it's highly unlikely that it was actually the thing that killed them. Same with hospitalizations. Look at the definitions for ICU, hospitalizations, and deaths. People say case-demic. I don't like using that word because I know it just turns people off. But the truth of the matter is the cases are drastically inflated on a test that doesn't mean a dang thing. And I'm not going to look at my kids and not be able to look them in the eye because I didn't stand today. If you believe this is the truth, you're being asked to stand now. We talked about in our recent live stream. You can check it out. Why do people just follow orders? We talked about the Milgram experiment. We talked about the Stanford prison experiments. In the Stanford prison experiment, it took 1 out of 50 people to stand firm and say this is wrong, to stop the entire experiment. You're needed. I'm one person. You're needed. Now you know. And when you know and you know the truth, you are being held to a higher standard. This can't be done alone. It will not be done alone, but I'm going to keep fighting for you. Diverge Media, stories that matter. We have hats. We're shipping now all through Canada. We're going to do it through Canada Post. If you want one, they're $30, no tax, plus whatever shipping is. You send us your information. We'll run it through, and we'll tell you what it is. Roughly 12 to 15 bucks, maybe 20 if you're outside of province. Outside of that, we take donations. I'm now doing this full-time as a full-time job. I took a risk. I took a gamble. We'll see what shakes out of it. All I know is I'm not going to turn back this year and regret what I did. I know that I have to speak. If things are going to change, it's on me. It's on you. It's on everyone. I look at my kids and I think about what they're growing up into, and I don't want to be the coward that was too afraid to say anything. Tim Cooligan, they're changing the definition of a COVID hospitalized person as of December 22nd or 23rd in Saskatchewan. That adds another 40 people to the COVID list right away, let alone the future stats. And this is the thing that they're doing, Tim. They're changing the definition so fast and so often that you can't keep on top of it. Independent outlets like mine is such a hard time. If you have good information directly from a medical study or a medical source, I should have been on this article or on this medical study a lot sooner. It's been out since the 22nd of November. I'm one person plus my brother. My wife does stuff. That's 3 people looking at a just chasm of information all the time. Then you got all the mainstream outlets with billions of dollars, CBC over $1 billion and plus $600 million plus dollars given to them, plus whatever they actually earn. And they're not looking to actually cover this stuff. And if they did, maybe we would actually have the stories come out. But we need you. That's all I can say. If you know a medical study that matters, if you know something that can add to this whole conversation and we can verify it and it's legitimate, we will talk about it. Tony Lynn, journalists used to have morals and integrity. Good for you standing for the truth, integrity, and for the future of our children. Appreciate that. All I can say is if you're afraid to share this video, you're afraid to share other things like this because you're going to get attacked, all I can say is good. If you're getting attacked, it means you stood for something in your life.
My comments are being blocked.
Your comments are being blocked?
Yeah.
On our own live stream.
On our own live stream.
Why?
I don't know. I tried sharing the article.
Man. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with Restream. I can't even see how many people are live right now or anything else. All I can say is please share this out. You know, I took time, give you a little context here. I don't really share a lot of personal stuff. I love the Cleveland Browns, you know, and I'm not watching that football game right now because this matters too much. Seeing pictures of my baby niece looking at people in sheet masks makes me sick. You know, I've seen it with my own kids and I'm trying to explain to them why some people wear them, why some people don't. Trying to explain, you know, with my daughter. Just watching my daughter, you know, not react well to people wearing masks as an 8-month-old. I get so fired up about this stuff because I think about the consequences long term. This is the part I don't understand. Put aside all the stuff we already know. Why do people think we're just going to be able to turn back on the economy and everything will be okay? Why do people think that it's just magically going to be okay all of a sudden once we decide we're going to go back? The next decade is going to be hard. Increased taxes are coming hard. And on top of that, if you can be fortunate enough to get a job after all this shakes out, there's going to be more people competing for less jobs, which means less money for those jobs. The standard of living is going to drastically decline because of these lockdowns. And if all of this is based on the PCR test, and all this is not being sent off to actually prove they're infectious, then what are we doing? You don't get to call me heartless because I have a difference of opinion. That's not how this works. I love everyone. I want the best for everyone. Who doesn't? But I'm thinking long-term about this, whereas maybe everybody's thinking short-term about this. And we can't even say there's X amount of hospitalized and ICUs and deaths if we're not actually proving they were infectious with COVID. Can you even prove, like, everything's become COVID. It's become the boogeyman for diagnosis that we're not even sure. Like, are people looking at all the options? Or are we just narrowing it down because the doctors, the physicians think it's such a prevalent issue that it's just anything that seems similar enough? That's now the thing. You know, we had to put off our Christmas with our family for this. Like, we bumped some things up. We've seen some family, but I didn't get to see all my family these holidays. Why? Because, and I understand completely why, is the fines threatening. Is like, yeah, we know we'll go to court. We know we'll win. But who wants to fight? That's a punishment in of itself. Who wants to be levied with a $10,000 fine against them or whatever they're going to do for hosting a get-together? You know, there's a lot going on right now, and to pretend it's only about COVID is just most extreme amount of ignorance you could possibly be. Politicians, you need to speak now. Decide what side you stand on. I have a feeling that this isn't just about COVID. Decide which side you stand on now. Truth falls where it falls, and it's very clear now that there's a massive, massive, massive issue with PCR testing being used as the mechanism to lock everyone down. I'm not denying that there's a problem. I'm not denying that we need to protect the most vulnerable. I'm not denying any of that. But can you really look the Canadian people in the eye and say this is the best we can do? Are you really going to be able to look the Canadian people in the eye, your own citizens, wherever you are all around the world, and say, we didn't know anything else, when all of the studies say that it's clear as day? Send it off. This is my proposal. Send it off. Prove people are actually infectious. If they have no symptoms, they get to live life as normal until you prove they're infectious. Oh, that's so dangerous. Not when you take 10 million people, only 300 are asymptomatic that have been tested, and of those 300, 0 actually were infectious. That's not a dangerous position to take based on the facts. It's not a dangerous position to take when the CDC, or CEBM, which is run by the CDC, has said anything over 24 threshold cycles cannot be cultured. That's not a dangerous position to take. For the people saying that, well, just give up, it's okay, it's all going to be okay. No, you clearly don't understand the magnitude of this problem. The economy doesn't just get to stop. You don't just flip the switch back on and everything goes back to normal. Everybody goes back to their jobs. The amount of jobs that are going to be lost over the next decade because of the measures today are astronomical. And the quality of life that you're going to get to have, even if you're in support of this crap, because you stood on the side, is going to be drastically less. Why? Because you're going to have many, 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 many more people competing for far less jobs. And when there's far less jobs and lots of applicants, it means the wage goes down. Basic economics, everyone. I'm frustrated, but I'm not quitting. And I know there's people in this comment section that are ready and they're willing to fight. And I'm not talking physically. We win this by waking people up. And there's a lot of people out there that know this crap does not add up. You don't win the conversation. You don't change minds by beating them over the head and going, you were wrong. You're such an idiot. Listen, I was wrong. I had my baby at home during the beginning of this. We had a home birth because we didn't want to go to the hospital because we didn't know what would happen. We didn't know what was coming. Some people were fooled early. Some people were fooled late. Some people woke up earlier. Some people woke up late. Some may never wake up at all. That's okay, but enough of us need to wake up, and you need to have patience and grace with people. That's right. You'll own nothing and like it. What a conspiracy theory. Oh, Agenda 2030. Well, that's a grand conspiracy theory, the media tells us. The day after, Justin Trudeau comes out, he goes, oh, this is a great opportunity for a global reset. And then the day after, he goes, well, I don't understand all these conspiracy theories. Uh-huh. And on this note, you can look it up. India is sending out packages to people, ivermectin and a few other prophylactic things. I'm not sure exactly what's in it, but to the cost of about $250 or $275, something like that. American or Canadian, I'm not sure. I think it's American. It's always American dollars compared to. Poverty has doubled. 270 million starving due to lockdowns, let alone 11 suicides a day by opioid deaths. Excuse me. We shared that video the other day on our Facebook page. You can check it out. The business owner and the health, he blocked in the health inspector after he told me how to shut down for serving people inside. And he goes, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to pay them with we're all in this together? And the people that are receiving their paychecks, the police, have no sympathy or compassion. And if you're in the police and you're part of this, and you're just going around and you're following these orders that don't make any sense. First off, educate yourself on the PCR test and what's really going on. Secondly, realize that you have no duty to honor unconstitutional and things that break the charter. You have no duty to honor those types of orders. In fact, you have duty to honor and protect the people. Etienne Le Dubois, over 500 years ago, we wrote about it in our article, The Mechanisms of Control During COVID, talked about the way to beat a tyrant or a dictator. And I say that because if there's no debate allowed and nobody's allowed to talk about these measures and there's no House of Commons open and we're not having debate there, and what is it then? It's just dictates, which makes a dictator. He talked over 500 years ago, the way to change things, to pull power from a dictator, a tyrant, is to unanimously stop listening. Ignore them like a child, basically, was the premise. Go on, open your businesses, stand firm. The courts, if the courts hold this up, I guess there's no recourse through legal action. Then we can have a different conversation about what that means. I don't know. I just know that the courts won't stand for this, in my opinion. In fact, we've shared a recent article. New York just struck one down, a gym owner who ripped up a $15,000 fine for opening his business, won in court. Why? And the judge said not to make light of the pandemic, but it is arbitrary. They're picking and choosing winners and losers. If Costco can open and Walmart can open, then everyone can open. And now, did you send me that article?
I can't find
Can't find it. And now, if you have people advocating for big box stores being limited so as to be fair to small business, do you realize that's one step further to complete control? It's not fair that big box stores open either. But if you're going to say, well, the solution here is to continue to dole out money to all the small businesses that we don't have, and then we'll shut down the portions of the big box stores that small business we've told is not essential and they can't sell that stuff, then what are we doing? That's worse. 10 million residents, 300 asymptomatic, out of roughly 10 million tested, 0 actually infectious. Of the people that tested positive again for reinfection, 0 actually infectious. What are we doing? Think about the consequences over the next 2, 5, 10 years. Think about the freedom you've lost in the last year. If you don't stand today, there will not be a time for you to stand. They're jamming everyone into the business in an area that is allowed to open, making the epidemic worse. I've said this for a long time, Tim. How does it make any sense to shut big business or to shut small businesses down and say everybody go to the big box stores where they can jam 700 plus into a building? Wouldn't it make sense to leave as many options open and say to people, control and limit the amount of people in your store? Ensure that people that are sick aren't actually coming in. And by the way, a lot harder to tell if somebody's sick with a mask on, in my opinion. And the aerosols are still leaking around the mask. If it's airborne, screwed anyways. And what we see with the mask is that they've been proven time and time again. 2018 court ruling. Show me the precedent outside of that. Don't show me some university study that didn't do a randomized control study and actually follow down the results. Don't show me the ones that they called and they said they had the sniffles still and all that. Don't give me those arbitrary ones. Show me the ones that are actually proven. And in 2018, it was proven the vaccine or mask policy for St. Michael's Hospital was arbitrary. It was not beneficial and did not protect the nurse or patient. That was the judge's decision. What are we doing? 2021 is coming quick. And if you don't want it to be like 2020, we got a lot of speaking up to do. Because I'm going to tell you what happens when you don't speak up. You're absolutely right. They swore an oath. When you don't speak up, they come for the nail that sticks out the highest. And right now, that's people like myself. And we're not there yet, but I can promise you, I can feel the tides churning. I know it's coming, and people are going to start attacking us just like they've attacked anybody else that garners enough attention. Everyone needs to start speaking. Do it in a way that's compassionate. Do it in a way that's loving and kind. We've all been duped to some shape, form, or extent. And if you haven't, good for you, but realize you're not the norm. We need to be about results. We need to be about changing public opinion. And that means throwing your ego aside and being willing to be wrong and say, my approach isn't working. I'm not reaching anybody outside my echo chamber. It's uncomfortable to speak to people with differences of opinion. It's uncomfortable to speak with people that are going to think you're an idiot. But it needs to be done. So we'll be putting together a template to send to all MPs and MPPs, talking about what we talked about today, about the massive amount of evidence that's come out, and simply asking the following: to go back to a standards of anybody who's asymptomatic or reinfected, that all those positive cases, before they can be deemed a positive case, must go to a lab to ensure they're actually able to infect another cell culture line. And if they're not, they should never be included in the positive case numbers or the hospitalizations or the deaths. And I would recommend the same for hospitalizations and ICU numbers and deaths, that they need to prove that anybody who tests positive with those numbers is actually able to infect others. We've tested roughly 330,000 per million people here in Canada. What would happen if you did that on a regular influenza year? I bet you'd find a lot of people, especially when you're not ensuring that they're actually infectious with it, that would have died from it, been hospitalized with it. But really, they just had it. And if this is a controversial stance to take, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. All the medical literature keeps pointing me to that point. And maybe I'm wrong, but I really, really, really don't think I am. And everything I keep looking at says you're not. And it's not like I'm pulling from Joe's blog. Nature.com always shares medical studies. CDC, CEBM. I mean, what more do you want? But again, I'll leave it out there for the people. This needs to be shared out. We need to speak now. Don't want to be a fine fighter, but we can't allow the Calgary police chief threats to stop us showing up at freedom rallies. We can't let the brainless goons stop us either. Yeah, the fine fighter, it's one of those things. It's a threat. It will be tossed out in court if your defense is on the right things. And it's arbitrary at best. And on top of that, least likely to infect others out there, and it's a charter right. So look how far they have pushed 1 year. It's going to get bad if we don't fight back. Yep. And there's, there's lots of people talking about all sorts of things. And all I can say is the information is clear as day. And we need to directly question the politicians responsible, the premiers responsible, the health officials responsible, and get a clear and concise answer to the question. If they're not going to do this, then why? Because what they're saying is, if I'm not willing to do this, and they cite logistics or anything like that, you can't say, well, it's a logistical problem when you've thrown away billions upon billions upon billions upon billions of dollars at everything. You don't get to claim logistic problem. It's also incredibly ignorant to say, we're going through a pandemic, therefore we need to lay off 97 nurses. You can see that on our page we recently put up. That's one back from September as well. So what's going on? Where's the extra beds? And if they're going to claim this is a logistic problem, that's the answer they try to give you, because that's the answer they originally gave of why the NML couldn't do the testing anymore, because they're highly trained officials that needed to do this. Then we need to figure it out. Leadership finds a way. They don't find excuses. Enough. I don't care how much you like a politician. I don't care how much they did stuff right in the past. They're professional athletes, basically, in my mind. Nobody cares what you did yesterday. What'd you do today? And if they're not willing to take a firm stance today for the truth and fight for the truth, they don't deserve your attention. They don't deserve your admiration. And they certainly don't deserve your vote. And they deserve your condemnation, quite frankly. I don't care how nice they are. I don't care how pleasant they are, how much they've been right on other things. There's 3 types of lies: commission, omission, and influence. And right now, my feeling is if you're not willing to take a stand as a politician, as a premier, as anybody in a position of influence or power, you're using your influence and your history and your record to get away from that. I would recommend anybody's businesses, etc., that are going through this, try to start a crowdfunding, get out on social media and fight it in the courts. We're starting to see wins in the states. It's arbitrary. They can't pick and choose. And don't you let them start picking and choosing what can be sold in a Walmart or a Costco either, because once they do that, they might even have a case to say, yes, we can lock down and make it arbitrary businesses because we've done it over here. Don't give an inch. Truth doesn't relent. It stands firm. That's all I'm going to leave it with. Greg Staley from Diverge Media. Thanks for popping in. I was way longer than I thought I'd be again. I guess I got a little fired up. A little bit. We'll see you Monday, or tomorrow night rather, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be going over again the Milford experiment and the Stanford prison experiments and kind of diving into those concepts deeper. It needs to be heard. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.